Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. We're really pleased to have two members from the largest city, actually, in the Commonwealth. Delegate Barry Knight, good to see you, sir.
Good to be here, Woody.
Delegate Glenn Davis, good to see you again.
Thank you for having me, Woody. Appreciate it.
So we're in a new building. Have you gotten used to your new quarters?
Little tight, a little smaller, but we're getting used to it. So.
A lot of changes. We have, I think, 15 new Democratic members, maybe 3 or 4 new Republican members, as I understand it.
Yep, there's a lot of new faces. We're getting used to them. They're finding their ways through the building and through the governmental process. So it's making for an interesting session.
So a little bit more transparency in the sense of having TV cameras now streaming live from the committee rooms.
It really is. It's something. It's a brand new day and a brand new era for us around here. Spent about $780,000 to wire up and for sound and for the cameras to go there to view the committees. So the full committees. So if people at home want to watch, they're more than able to.
So what's happening in terms of our budget? I know we just started, but obviously as a result of a constitutional amendment in the Constitution for the Commonwealth, you have to balance the budget by the end of the session.
We really do, Woody. It's a $107 billion biennial budget, and unlike the federal government, we get down, we roll our sleeves up, and we balance our budget. We get it done in 60 days. This is a long session, so we've got a lot of needs out there, and competing interests out there. So we have a finite source of revenue. We're trying to keep our taxes as low as possible, but we really do have to fund education is a big one, in transportation, and our jails, and our mental health situation. And we have to look at whether the federal government is going to do a continuing resolution and how that's going to affect us, because we're a little bit dependent on where we live on some federal spending, because we get a lot of federal dollars to help sustain our armed forces.
So what happens in Washington as of this Friday will have a significant impact on Virginia Beach and your district.
Oh, tremendous. I mean, obviously, we have a tremendous military population. A large amount of the revenue Virginia Beach and surrounding areas come from DoD spending. So what we're going to see in Washington is going to trickle down very quickly, not just to the Commonwealth of Virginia, but down to our districts directly.
So if an agreement is not reached by midnight Friday, I take it this sequestration goes into effect. Can you tell us what that means?
Sure. So, basically, we're going to have a situation where there's going to be cutbacks in military spending, and it's going to have a dire impact. Hopefully that they can get something resolved or something gets negotiated at the last second in Washington to prevent that. I don't think a lot of legislators up in Washington understand the impact that has in our region, because a lot of the states don't have the same amount of spending coming from the military as we do in Hampton Roads. And obviously the spending in Hampton Roads trickles all through the Commonwealth. So it has significant impacts, and we're hopeful that something actually does get done, Woody, and we don't have to worry about those cuts.
Talk to us about some of the military installations that populate your district and the greater area there.
Well, in Hampton Roads, we have the world's largest naval base with Norfolk. We also have a master jet base in Oceana, and Oceana has an outlying auxiliary landing field, which is Fentress. And Oceana was not on the BRAC list, but it got put on the BRAC list on the last go-round. So we decided—
That's the Base Realignment Commission?
It is,
Okay.
it is, and they wanted to investigate whether to close that. That would have been devastating for Hampton Roads and Virginia Beach. So what we at the legislature did is we appropriated $7.5 million and said, Virginia Beach, if you'll do the same for a total of $15 million, take this money to roll back encroachment around Oceana. We did that. We've gotten awards for it. We're recognized for it. We then took some of that money and went to the outlying landing field in Chesapeake. They're putting a match to it. And when Langley had some problems with some layoffs, we put some money over there. So we have proven to the federal government, and they have recognized that we are very, very good stewards of Oceana Base. And I think we'll be very safe if we have a BRAC realignment, and I don't believe Oceana will be on the chopping block this time because of the efforts that we've taken. I mean, it's our largest economic driver by far in Hampton Roads, and we want to protect it any way possible.
And I assume you want to do the same, continue that protection.
Oh, definitely. You know, I was on city council back when Barry and the rest of his colleagues up here put together the $7.5 million to start saving some of that surrounding area around the bases, and prove to the federal government that we were here to work with them to protect those areas and to make sure we could keep our neighbors in the military, you know, with us. And I, you know, what Barry put together with that plan and his colleagues truly did save us that year, and is why we will be saved and probably not on the BRAC list going forward.
And of course, the other big economic driver for your district and the Hampton Roads area and the state of Virginia is the Port of Virginia.
It is. It's a jewel of Virginia. It has economic impacts all across the Commonwealth. We're in the process of finishing the process of getting ready to start dredging to 55 feet. It will be the deepest port on the East Coast. It is more competitive, has more advantage than New York, than down in South Carolina. It's truly an opportunity for us to drive a huge economic opportunity through the Commonwealth, especially when you start talking these inland ports that go with it. You know, once again, it's great to talk policy. I get to do that all the time, but from what Barry and his guys up in appropriations have done to make sure that money is available, that we continue the expansion of that port and the dredging, is what's made this all possible.
So there are also other major improvements going on at the port, aren't there?
Absolutely. We put $360 million in there for larger infrastructure. We have a finite area of land there, and we got new straddle carriers there, and now we can double stack or triple or quadruple stack these containers, and we've gone up to 50% more room just by being able to stack these containers. So we've made this big major investment in the port. And to talk to what Glenn says, we are going to appropriate $20 million. The federal government wants us to appropriate $20 million of cash to look about dredging to 55 foot, but also to widen to 1,200 foot. So when we have these large Panamax ships coming in and we have an emergency and an aircraft carrier has to get out at the same time, that they can pass safely in there. So we really understand the economic impact of dredging to 55 foot. So that in conjunction with our Navy, they're going to coexist.
And I understand those large Panamax ships are the result of the Panama Canal being widened.
It is, and having those come in has allowed more distribution center opportunities in the Commonwealth as well, which is what's driving a lot of the economic growth in certain areas of the Commonwealth that honestly have been hurting prior to this.
And of course, you mentioned inland ports. I know there's one at Front Royal. I believe it's a huge distribution center. Talk to us about its functions.
Sure. Well, whenever you can bring the cargo in and bring it up and not have to put it on rail right at the port down in Hampton Roads, you can bring it up. You have easier accessibility, and it makes more business sense for a lot of the large companies that are looking for distribution centers in the Mid-Atlantic to utilize those areas. We saw it in Front Royal. We're hearing about it in other areas that we're playing with of having inland ports. And in some of those places, it's a huge economic engine that immediately blows up the economy in that area.
Besides the military and the port, who are some of the other major employers in your district and in the Hampton Roads area?
Well, we have the corporate headquarters of Dollar Tree, and Glenn's wife actually works for Dollar Tree. She's an executive there, so he understands that. But in the Dollar Tree area, they're in Chesapeake, which is right across the border, and we've found out that regionally we all benefit when the headquarters or business moves in. So we're going to try to take some ownership of some of those folks, even though they live in work in Chesapeake. But Dollar Tree had a merger with Family Dollar. They're up there to thousands and thousands of stores now, and that's going to be a hub in the Chesapeake area that Virginia Beach citizens will be aware of. And we've got a steel that makes chainsaws and weed eaters, and they come to Virginia Beach. They build these power tools and export them all over the world. So we have a talented labor force there and a lot of labor to be utilized.
How are the regions cooperating, especially since Go Virginia came into being?
Very well. You know, there was a time down there where it was really difficult to get, you know, some of the mayors to sit together. You know, start looking back, you know, 20, 30 years ago. Now there's a lot of cooperation in Hampton Roads, especially with Go Virginia. And you take the leaders of Go Virginia in that region, and they're all from different parts of that area. It's driving economic opportunity. Most recently, you know, they came together for a bid on the Amazon opportunity, and we knew that was a long shot, but we saw how they could come together to create an opportunity like that. A region-wide broadband proposal. So there's a lot more work being done collaboratively across the region, which is we're going to need to do to be on the map for some of these large economic opportunities down the road.
Now you have a wider perspective, so to speak, because you traveled over 50,000 miles in a recent primary. Talk to us about what those travels taught you about the Commonwealth.
Woody, it was amazing. So a lot. One, you know, just the jewels that we have. I mean, I was kind of embarrassed as the first time I was driving out west, and my driver said, "Glenn, you want to stop and see the D-Day Memorial?" And I said, "You know, what D-Day Memorial?" And I didn't realize that, you know, the federal D-Day Memorial is in Virginia, and it's just one of the most moving memorials you'll ever see in your life. But then you see the beauty of the Commonwealth, but also the unique challenges each region faces. You know, Woody, I come from the largest city in Virginia, down in Virginia Beach, and you know, the challenges we have are significant, but they're completely different than a Wise, Virginia, or a Botetourt. And to go to some of those areas, when you walk through Giles County down Main Street and you realize the economic development grants that are available for some of those areas. In one case, it allowed the facades of the buildings on Main Street to be renovated so they look brand new, but none of the money could be used for the inside, so they are uninhabitable. And you realize what some of those things that need to be fixed up here is because of actually that trip that I put a bill in this year to allow 25% of economic development grants to be used for parts of the project that kind of not directly but indirectly related to make sure that it can achieve the end desired result when the grant was given. So just to learn so much about the Commonwealth, its beauty, as well as some of the unique challenges around the Commonwealth.
Now, as a small businessman, you, of course, recognize the need for the state to increase its stature in terms of being recognized as business friendly. What can the Commonwealth do to achieve that?
Well, we used to be the most business-friendly state in America, and we've slipped on down. We're still in the single digits, but we slipped down. We want to bring it back. And the first thing we can do is cut any regulations that are burdensome. We need to work for the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. I understand that, but businesses come to us from time to time and tell us what we can do to try to make it more business-friendly, and we're looking to do that all that we can. So we're absolutely looking for suggestions from the citizens that we work for to try to do that, because residential housing in Virginia doesn't really pay its own way. It's industry, commercial, and industrial that does. So anything we can do to lure business in. Glenn is right. It was a long shot with Amazon, but we put our best foot forward and tried to realize what it would take to lure a corporation of that size. And we found out that we had a few shortfalls. Maybe our airport wasn't utilized as much as it could be down there at Norfolk Airport. So we know we have a few problems that we're going to work on, and we're going to put some money there. And we do give some Virginia Economic Development Partnership grants, and nobody wants to spend any state dollars. But it's like a small businessman. I don't want to pull $1,000 out of my pocket because it's my money to put in my business unless it's going to return me $3,000 or $4,000.
What about the double taxation issue that you and I talked about previously?
Sure, and Woody, this is still a big issue. You know, Virginia has the 30th worst tax policies in the nation still, and we have to correct that. And part of the issue is the double taxation on Virginia companies when they sell services to businesses in other states. Virginia is one of only 17 states left in the nation that has something called cost of performance, and all that means is that we want to charge taxes on Virginia businesses because the workers are here, when almost every other state only charges taxes based on where the customer is. So if a business sells, let's say, high-tech cybersecurity services in Maryland, Virginia says, hey, the workers here, we want our income tax. Maryland says, the workers here, we want our income tax. And there's a double taxation there. Now you understand why all these high-tech businesses are going to D.C. and Maryland and not coming to Virginia. We have to start fixing that. It's, you know, we have to realize we're in the 21st century now. And we need a 21st century tax code that allows us not only to compete, but lead the way in the nation. And we need to be bold. We need to be bold with taxation. We need to be bold with Medicaid reform. There's a lot of things that if we were bold, we'll get on the map, we'll get a lot of press and PR around the nation, but most importantly, we'll have a great place to live, work, and raise your family and start that next business.
And of course, as a farmer, you understand the kinds of revenues that farming and forestry produce here in the Commonwealth. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's by far the largest industry in Virginia. It's $91 billion. And then you have the spinoff benefit that is actually double that amount. We've got anything from forest chips that are going overseas to be burned as biomass and power plants to corn and soybeans. We've got a lot of agricultural industries in Virginia that are in the top 10, such as poultry, broilers, beef cattle. So it's a tremendous industry. The people that live in urban areas don't understand how important that it really is. We've got a brand new Secretary of Natural Resources coming in, a brand new Secretary of Agriculture. They've both been in Virginia a while. They understand. I'm excited to work with them and explore some more opportunities to help our farmers.
And of course, there are a lot of opportunities to export corn, soy, for example, and other products out of the Port of Virginia.
Oh, definitely. You know, I joke with Barry. I remember when I was first elected to City Council, I knew kind of how big our agricultural industry was in Virginia Beach, and my grandparents were farmers when they grew up, but until I had a chance to go through all the farms down in Virginia Beach, I never realized just how much was produced there and exported out of that area. And then, of course, traveling around the Commonwealth and seeing just how vast our agricultural industry is, and how much of it, like you said, Woody, does get exported. And I've always said, you know, industries shrink and grow, but the one industry that's not going to shrink is agriculture. The number of people in the world isn't going to decrease. So the need to feed more and more people is going to continue growing, and it's going to continue to create a thriving opportunity for those in the agricultural industry.
And of course, there are opportunities in terms of agritourism, and the wine industry is flourishing, so there's a lot of opportunity there as well.
Oh, there is. We have a couple of them down in our neck of the woods that have opened up not long ago. You can go there, you can see the beauty. It's a great winery. Virginia has some wonderful wines and have gotten some great awards recently and over the last few years. And not just that, but even when you take it, I have family coming to town, and I'll take them down to a farm in our area just so they can see the new John Deere tractors and all. I mean, you take kids under the age of 10, and they love these things. So it's just amazing what attracts them. And now the farmers markets. I mean, tourists come into town, and they love going through the Pungo area and going to the farmers markets and getting all their fresh fruits and vegetables. And now some of those farmers actually have deliveries to us that live in the area.
To what extent have we been able to wean ourselves away from the largesse of the federal government in terms of developing and attracting new businesses to the Commonwealth?
Well, the federal government with the military installations is still the largest driver in town, but it is the Port of Virginia. And I told you earlier that we have put so much money in the Port of Virginia and all the spin-off businesses. I understand one out of every 8 jobs in Virginia is directly related to the Port of Virginia. So we've got that, but we also have to try to bring in private industry. And that's where we are working with the state on some of these grants to entice big businesses to look at us. And we have some wonderful industrial sites. We have this transatlantic cable that came in from Spain and South America that landed at Camp Pendleton right there in Virginia Beach, went over to Corporate Landing Park, and we're hoping that that is going to be an internet highway for us for information. Because these data centers such as Amazon and Google, they will not come unless you've got these internet pipelines with these fiber optics.
And of course, education is important as well as transportation in terms of retaining and attracting new businesses.
Oh, definitely. Well, education is the foundation of a qualified and skilled workforce. So we have to make sure we've got that first and foremost. That is what really drives businesses to come here. We have great education systems in a lot of the Commonwealth, but where we fall short in some areas are the areas where high-speed bandwidth doesn't exist to all the schools or to the kids at home. You know, you can't take advantage of 21st century educational tools that are online if you don't have high-speed bandwidth. And that's a priority of I think, the whole General Assembly this year, is to see what we can do to help grow significantly the bandwidth network around the Commonwealth so everyone has access to all these tools on the internet so our kids truly can be prepared to compete in the 21st century global economy, and for us to have that skilled workforce to be able to attract those companies.
Now, how are your K through 12 schools doing in your district and the immediate region?
Oh, wonderful. So in Virginia Beach, they're all accredited. Many of them are extremely well recognized in the nation as being some of the best schools in the nation. Greenland Collegiate's one, Princess Anne with their IB programs another. So we're doing extremely well. In other parts of the region, there's a little bit more of a challenge, Woody. You know, you have to be able to attract good teachers to the areas, and you know, it's a challenge. Teachers don't take the job to become rich, but they do need a living wage to be able to, you know, sustain themselves, and they want to live in an area that's good for their children as well. So we have to find a way to compensate teachers and be able to provide good quality teachers to areas so those students have the same economic opportunities, and I think that's what we've been working on. I think we've got good schools all around Hampton Roads, but I think we can do a little bit more in some of those parts of the region to make sure that they're on par with the rest, and it all starts with having those good teachers.
What about charter schools?
I'm a big fan of charter schools, Woody. I think charter schools is the way that you allow innovation in education, and honestly, it's the rising tide that lifts all ships. I look at the charter school in Virginia Beach that we started. It's a lottery system. And it's about almost 50% free and reduced lunches at our charter school. It's an IB program. And last year we had the highest average SOL test score for every SOL test in the city compared to every other school, including our academies. It's an amazing success story. Not that it's just charter schools are ways to do this, but it shows what can work, and then sometimes we can take those same principles and same practices and put them back in the public school and see the same drivers happen. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and in areas of Virginia where we really don't have the resources for certain type of educational opportunities, especially with children with disabilities, those on the autistic spectrum, charter schools are the way to provide those opportunities and resources for those students.
And of course, Barry, the community colleges play a huge role.
They really do. The community colleges back years ago, it was almost like trial and error, but they have come along and they have let so many people, citizens of Virginia, get a college education. We have this big reciprocal program that if you go to community college for 2 years and study the right courses, then you can get accepted a lot easier to UVA and Virginia Tech and some of our flagship universities. But the job that they do and the opportunities they open up for our citizens is great. And I'd like to touch on what Glenn was saying about our public schools in Virginia Beach and in the state of Virginia. Glenn and I are both businessmen. We understand the supply and demand factor, and we have a tremendous demand for teachers. We don't have the supply. So we've been trying to give teachers a little bit of raise with a local match. Last year, we didn't ask for a local match. We gave them a 2% raise. This year, there's some legislation in to try to give the teachers another raise, but to try to let these teachers get their degree in 4 years as opposed to 5 years. I mean, teachers don't do it for the money, like Glenn said. They do it for the love of the students and for the love of the kids. And we have to make it a little bit easier on them and less expensive on them to get their teacher license. I've got some legislation in this year to try to help that also.
Now, in terms of the match to localities, correct me if I'm wrong, if part of the money that comes from the state is actually from the lottery, that match is not required.
Well, it depends on what the General Assembly dictates and where the money comes from.
Right.
And usually it's an allocation, and like Barry said, in many cases, in many times in years past, it has required a match. And when I was on City Council back in the day, it did. But like Barry mentioned, the last one didn't. And I think the local governments really appreciated that because they knew they had to start being able to do something to help attract additional teachers.
Now, talk to us about veterans, especially in terms of their educational opportunities as they return from theaters of war. There are now opportunities, for example, if someone was a medic, to get almost immediate certification through a junior college. Talk to us about those kinds of programs.
Woody, that's a huge opportunity that is leaving the Commonwealth, and we're trying to do more and more to make sure they stay here. It's an amazing workforce, a very skilled workforce, like you said, but we're seeing a lot of them when they retire leave the Commonwealth, and we've done a lot to help them stay here. The first is to help them get that educational degree or certification by bridging the gap between the acronyms they use in the military and what we look at as far as requirements in education, or even to bridge the gap between the acronyms in the military and what us in the private sector, think about when we're hiring someone, so we can better understand the skill set that our veterans have. So we've done a lot on both those, which I think has been significantly advantageous. The other piece that comes into play and it's being worked on is how what the tax treatment is on our veterans on their retirement when they come out of the military. It's something that obviously is very important because they're attracted to come to areas where they're able to have the best lifestyle for themselves and their family, and we don't want to lose them to North Carolina and to other states. But I would have to say that it's an amazing workforce, a very skilled workforce, and it is one of the reasons why a lot of the companies have looked at Virginia and come here because they know that that is part of the workforce available, especially when you start talking cybersecurity and some of these high-tech trades.
Yeah, as I understand it, Barry, there's some real opportunities in cybersecurity, and not only for youngsters, but for adults who need retraining, for example. At our junior colleges, if you wind up with a certificate in cybersecurity, I've heard some of those entry-level jobs start at $80,000 a year.
Yes, my youngest son's going to Old Dominion and taking computer science over there, and he's had job offers from a lot of folks from industry such as Norfolk Southern, right on to some private folks that are looking towards computer science. Some of it is in cyber and such, so it really is a growing industry. What you asked Glenn a second ago about the veterans, we have the largest concentration of veterans anywhere in America in our Hampton Roads area. And we put in a budget amendment a couple of years ago to get a 50-50 match for a Veterans Care Center for two. Right. And the feds wouldn't step up. So we consolidated, put all the money in, and we're fortunate enough to have a Veterans Care Center in Virginia Beach, and they're breaking ground on it now. And we wouldn't be sitting here speaking English if it wasn't for these veterans in the past and today. So we love our veterans, and whatever we can do to help them transition back in. And some of them that got wounded or have some injuries, we have a Veteran Care Center for them. It's actually in Glenn's district, right along the border of my district. Our districts match up. So it's absolutely a tremendous asset for Virginia Beach and for our veterans in the state.
So will that supplement and augment what the VA is supposed to be doing for veterans?
A little. Well, the great thing is not only does it do what Barry talked about, but there is a part there that helps them with their relationship with the VA, to help them interface better, to get the resources and services that the VA offers. So that's very important. And as much as I've had veterans reach out to me and they're very excited about this, they're as excited knowing that there's that resource there to help them work with the VA better. I mentioned one of the things that you asked Barry about with cybersecurity and the jobs. Woody, I mean, you need to come to Virginia Beach sometime and see the Advanced Technology Center, or the Advanced Technical Center, ATC. We have kids there learning skills, and one of them is cybersecurity. And we've had kids be hired right out of high school. It's amazing. It's like the NBA draft, Woody, when you start looking at cybersecurity now, because you don't have a workforce already out there that is skilled in this. You have kids coming out of high school with more skills than legacy workers, because a decade ago, cybersecurity wasn't that big of an industry. Right. So you literally have firms at the doorsteps of these high schools with these advanced classes being taught to take these kids for $80,000 right out of high school, and you see it in Virginia Beach.
Great. Thank you for being here, Barry Knight, Glenn Davis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I am Woody Evans. Bye.